Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Communications and Conversations. I'm your host, John Crook. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, sorry we were off last week. I know I had a couple of people wrote in and said, "Hey, John, what's up with the show, man? Like, are you still doing it? Did you already drop out? What's going on?" And I said, "Well, no. We're still live. We're we're kicking. But we were off because I was doing a presentation on part of an amateur radio system network that I've built with the help of others. It's not all me. I'm more than happy to tell people, hey, that I was able to help out on there. And it was at the Minnesota North Star Radio Convention. So I was a presenter there at the Minnesota North Star Radio Convention. Thank you very much for them allowing me to present as N9UPC. It's nice, obviously if people follow me and stuff, they know that, hey, obviously Communications Conversations is one of the shows that I do, but I do some other shows. I wear some other hats and stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of where it all comes into. But thank you for the conference to allow me to present there. It was a great day of just conferences, which I kind of like to a degree. I mean, yeah, you go to some of these ham shows and you see dealers, you see vendors, you see all that kind of stuff like that. And you see all the other, YouTubers waving around, handing out stuff and everything. But sometimes I just want to go to learn. And this is a great conference for going to learn. So if anybody is aware of the next year, the next date, I have to look. It's next year. It's going to be in October again. I want to say the 11th or something, but if you do a Google search, Minnesota North Star Radio Conference, Tri-Convention, there were even clubs there that had like club tables, and I was able to go to these club tables and saying, oh, hey, this and this, and it was nice to just be able to kind of ham it up, for sake of a better term. I hate that term, but I guess it really worked on there. However, one of the things that I did do, or one of the reasons that, once again, there was no show last week, was because of doing the presentation there. So people said, John, when is the next presentation going to be available? When is there? All these kind of things. So I said, you know what? Let's do this week's show about the presentation that I did today. Therefore, you can find out about this network. And once again, it's called the DUNoW Network. And we're going to jump into all that in a minute. However, before we get into that, let's talk about our sponsor, JJK Communications. Now, why is this important? Well, JJK Communications is a sponsor of Communications and Conversations, and also is a sponsor to help grow and support the DUNoW Network, which we're going to cover today. It's great to have them as a sponsor. Right now, JJK Communications, if you check out, they're running a special on their social media platform right now. Check on over on Facebook, and you're going to see the October radios of the month. That's right, the October radios of the month are the Alluance Redivis H1. It's a DMR dual-band handheld, great little radio, just came out this past summer. And then the second one is going to be the Redivis HA1G, which is a GMRS handheld radio. These radios are absolutely amazing. The DMR radio can be used on the DUNoW network. Dual band, dual display if you wanted. It has APRS in it and GPRS. I'm not seeing too many radios out there that are DMR capable, that have GPS, have APRS built into there. I've played with one. I really enjoy it. JJK Communications has been nice to provide one for that aspect on there too. And then we have, with JJK Communications Radio of the month for October, you have the HA1G. Now, that's the GMRS version. So right away, the radio is packed with 30 GMRS channels. Those are your standard 1 through technically 21, right? So you have your normal 1 through 14, which is like your FRS channels. Then you have the 8 more channels, sorry, to 22, not 21, but the 8 more GMRS repeater channels on there. So when you have those 30 channels, but then you also have over 200 memories that allows you to program in specific GPRS frequencies and tones and everything that you need to do it on there. You can take this radio, and I've known some people that have used them, and they said, John, for all the traveling I do with GMRS, it is so nice and so great because I just program all the different repeaters that I need to into this radio, and it's good to go. So check out JJK Communications. You can reach them by going to their website at www.jjkcom.com. You can give them a telephone call, or you can even email them. Email sales, that's SALES, at jjkcom.com. Once again, JJK Communications is a proud sponsor for the Communications and Conversations podcast. Well, as I said, this week's episode is going to be about the presentation that I did at the North Star Radio Conference. Amateur stuff, and on the show here, we said we're going to talk about all the different things on there. Amateur stuff is kind of an interesting thing on there. The amateur world is kind of like, one person told me one time, and they use an example, is like Madonna. It's always redefining itself, right? The amateur radio community is kind of unique in that regards. Part of that is, people want to do, like right now, the big hot thing in amateur radio is POTA and SOTA stuff, right? It never was thought about, came up on the radar and stuff. Before that, we had like APRS, and before that, we have like digital voice or digital data modes, like FT8 was a craze. APRS was a craze for a while. So we're always kind of like, what is the flavor of the month almost in amateur radio? Well, one of the things that I like in my lane for amateur radio stuff is I'm not a big data guy. All right, people have said, John, you like digital voice, you'd probably want to do graded data. No, I don't. Data's not for me, but digital voice is for me. And that's where today's show kind of comes into play, is talking about the DUNoW system. So the DUNoW system stands for Digital User Network of Wisconsin. Now, as I said at the presentation, I want to stress, while we call it the DUNoW system, because it features and is designed for people to use, and was the concept, was for being used in Wisconsin. It has now grown, and I have numerous people from different places checking in. There's people that, Wisconsin gets cold, unfortunately, but there's people that are saying that they're in like northern Wisconsin or other places that are snowbirds, that they actually will go down to like Arizona or go down to Florida or something like that, hop on the DUNoW network and talk back to people in Wisconsin. So it's not a network that has to be just Wisconsin users. It can be anybody, and the network integrates all the different digital voice modes that are shown on the screen. That is what the neat part about the DUNoW network is. So one of the biggest things, the DUNoW system has a concept, has a goal, had a vision when I created it, which was called No Amateur Left Behind. And what I mean by that is that in digital voice, you do have fractionation, right? Analog is analog, hands down, right? But when you come to digital voice, there's going to be people who are going to like, Yaesu System Fusion. There's people who are going to like P25. There's people who are going to like DMR. There's people who are going to like D-Star and M17 and all that stuff like that in there. That is fine. But when you're doing digital voice, you have to ask yourself a question, and that question is, who moves? What I mean by that is if I'm talking on Yaesu System Fusion, for an example, and a friend of mine is talking on P25, how can we communicate? Fusion can't talk to P25, P25 can't talk to Fusion. And then, we can go to analog. Everybody's like, well, there's analog, and analog just goes ahead and it's there. Well, yeah, analog is there, but in that realm, though, it's saying that, and it's like, so I have to stop using digital because I want to talk to someone on digital that doesn't have the mode to digital? So in that case, well, then why don't they move? Why don't they buy a Fusion radio and to talk to me on digital? And then vice versa. Well, why don't you buy a P25 radio, John? Which, because I have a lot of them, but why don't you buy a P25 radio to talk to him? So now we get into this fight. Now we get into this battle. And the DUNoW system really was purposely designed to say no amateur left behind. And what we mean by that is to create a common platform or a common ground where you can come in on your digital voice mode of choice, and you can come in on my digital voice mode of choice, and we can talk together. Now, what I mean by that, once again, is that example I gave of saying, okay, I'm using Fusion, someone else is using P25, we want to talk together. And then let's add another one in the mix. So I'm using Fusion, Bill is using P25, and Carol is using DMR. Okay, so once again, who moves? We have two modes. You can make the argument of saying, okay, well, there's different devices that can cross-modulate and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, all that stuff. Yeah, but now when we get into three modes, how are we doing that? And if we start to expand more and more and more, how do we get over that hump? How do we get over that issue? And that's where the concept of no amateur left behind. Now, I will stress this. don't go ahead and do this. Well, if there's one digital mode, then this wouldn't be a problem. No, wrong. And I'm going to tell you that's wrong, okay? Because it goes back to that old joke. You have two people, two amateurs in a community. You have one club. If you have three amateurs in one community, you have two clubs. All righty? There's not going to be one undeniable digital voice mode. There's not. It's not in business. It's not in public safety. And then I tell people, I say, okay, so if you think there's one digital voice mode, I tell people, how many people use RTTY as a data mode? And people usually raise their hand. I said, okay, how many people use FT8 as a data mode? And people will raise their hand. I said, how many people use AX25? Yes, we're going to go back to the old packet protocol. And some people will raise their hand. And I said, okay, so all of you use different data modes. Okay, we're all getting rid of that. We're going PAC-TOR 3. That's it. It's only PAC-TOR 3. And then people will be like, well, no, wait, nah, I don't use PAC-TOR. That might be too expensive for this or this. Right, the same thing is happening with digital voice modes. All righty? There's not going to be one constant mode. There's going to be people that will enjoy a mode or enjoy multiple modes. But then, once again, when you want to cross-communicate, and that's what I'm going to use a term here, there's a lot of cross-communicate between different digital voice modes, you have an issue that you need to overcome. Now, let's back up and go one step further on that. Public safety, people have been doing this for ages. Businesses have been doing it. Public safety has been doing it. Yes, it's all a situation of saying that the blocks are there. We need to connect the blocks. The question is going to come down to is how do we connect the blocks? But it is doable. It is not unforeseen. It's happening. And the DUNoW Network is an example of that. So that was one of the main principles of the DUNoW Network. Now, why did I build? Why do people connect into? Why do people put their repeaters into the DUNoW system? Well, because of this screen here. You have a wide variety of radios that cover multiple different modes on there. You have all the modes on the DUNoW Network or capable to be used on the DUNoW Network in this picture on the screen here. You have P25, you have Fusion, you have DMR, you have D-Star, you have M17. All right, you have all those capable on this display. Now, the DUNoW Network had kind of like I didn't want to come into it with just like, okay, we're just going to put it up together and stuff and do it from there. No, I had some ground rules. I had some definitions that needed to be done. So the first one was that I wanted to create an amateur radio or amateur digital voice network designed to cross mode the different digital voice modes together. And that's what I wanted. I wanted someone to be able to come in on one digital voice mode, and then that single digital voice mode can be changed, cross-modulated, whatever term we want to use or whatever, to be able to go out on those other digital voice modes. The purpose, so you have to have a purpose, right? When you're doing something, have a purpose. And the purpose was to promote and provide a common platform which levies no digital user left behind in a goal of communication with other digital voice users. All righty? We're not taking and saying, okay, I only want this to talk to this and this. No, the purpose was to design this. It's not to see how many digital voice modes I can cross over. It's not to do this. No, it was a simple, basic purpose to be able to allow different digital voice users to communicate with other different digital voice users. But now I want to set a goal. Because coming from public safety, coming from the world that I am in, I was going saying, okay, I need a goal. And that goal is to create a network to serve as a connection between the different digital voice modes, leveraging infrastructure, public access points, and personal access points. Well, what the heck does that mean, John? Well, what it is I didn't want this to be a repeater-only network. I didn't want this to be a hotspot-only network. I wanted it to be a network that you could have a repeater in the area and connect into that repeater if you want to, hence infrastructure. To have public access points. What I mean in this case by public access points is I mean people that will take like a VHF or a UHF mobile radio, connect a digital voice modem to it, or maybe it's already a digital voice mobile radio of some sort or whatever, and have it like you put the antenna up on your house or you put it somewhere and people can use the radio to go into that network. And then to also have that network to be able to support personal access points. These are like the hotspot devices, low power devices, stuff that don't have an outside antenna, but you can walk around your house and talk on the radio. That is what I wanted. So not only was the goal to cross the digital voice modes, but the goal was also to cross the different types of network access for digital voice modes that would come together. So that was basically the thought, the purpose, and the goal of the DUNoW network. Now, what does DUNoW utilize? Well, we use the AMCOM network, and we're going to get into the DMR side of in this presentation here in just a little bit, why we did what we did. The next thing we do is we utilize servers. Some of the different digital voice modes require servers to be used. That's fine. It's fine. It's okay. The other thing that we utilize is existing existing digital amateur radio networks. WiresX is a network that's out there. It is not DUNoW's network. It's not everything, but DUNoW has a connection into that, so we need to utilize that. And then the last thing that we utilize is direct network connections, stuff that is not going to require a server in space and time. It's going to require a direct connection. Now, could that connection be via the internet? Could it be via the intranet? Could it be via VPN? Whatever the case may be. Yes, that is what we do here with the DUNoW network. Now, where did we start? Where did this all come from? So the funny thing is that this is actually a picture of a volleyball game, and right away, people were like, what are you talking about with a volleyball game? So here's what it is. I was at a volleyball game with my kids, and I was watching my kids play. And at this court where they were playing volleyball, they went along and they had the volleyball net up. But as I'm sitting in the gymnasium looking, there are like posters on the side. And there's posters and rules for volleyball court usage. And there's pictures and posted for rules basically saying for tennis usage. And there's pictures and rules for like badminton usage. And there's pictures and rules for basketball usage. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, that's weird. So I saw, okay, the court, it's got the basketball hoops that retract. Okay, cool, fine. Understand that. Basketball, volleyball, that makes sense. But how does tennis come into play? How does badminton come into play? And what ended up happening was that I kind of looked around through the day there. I saw that the net system could be set up to be like a tennis court. So the net could be mounted low instead of high like a volleyball net. And then I saw that the net system can also be raised about midway to be turned into like a badminton set. And I'm thinking, you have this one gymnasium here that is used for 4 different things. And now the gymnasium, too, let's back that up, was big enough that you could also run a curtain down there. They had like a curtain suspended. And instead of the whole gymnasium being taken up for volleyball or whole gymnasium being taken up for basketball or one exact sport, you could divide that gymnasium into 2 and you could have 2 completely different sports taking place in that one huge gymnasium. So to me, it was just sitting back and like, okay, so why can't we do this with the amateur radio aspect of things? And that's where I said, that's what we need to create. We need to create, because Wisconsin did not have it. Wisconsin had DMR very embedded into like down by Madison and Milwaukee and kind of a little bit up the east side there, because guess what? We spill over from Motorola. God, I wonder what Motorola makes. Oh, radios, duh, right? Okay. So you had a lot of that spread up there. You had a lot of fusion repeaters in kind of sprinkled out throughout the whole state and with some heavy concentrations of them. And then you have some P25 repeater here, there, kind of little popped up there. You had some D-Star repeaters through the area there and stuff. And D-Star kind of represented its own thing because of the way that they network down there, which we kind of talk about here in a little bit. And then you had some users of M17, but there's really no M17 repeaters out there, at least in Wisconsin, and it's a very kind of slow growth thing. M17's having some issues right now on there. I feel kind of bad for them because I saw the same thing happen in DMR, which I kind of will cover here in a minute. But that's where it came from. 2021, sitting in a gymnasium, watching sports, going and saying, they can do it, why can't we? So now we started simple. That's really what we did. We started simple. And what we did was after coming back from there, what we did is we took a WiresX room, and this WiresX room, which is right here, 21667, and we took that and then we communicated or fed the WiresX feed into some repeaters that were connected via the Yaesu System Fusion IMRS setup. So now we had a wires X room. Any traffic that comes in a wires X room on 21667 would then come out the local node on RF, and that RF node would then feed the repeaters. Okay, cool. I liked it. It was simple. It was easy. Were we crossing modes yet? No, but we were kind of working on that goal of infrastructure usage. So we started to build off of that platform. And then that really started to kind of show the trials and tribulations. We had things that we had to do, make sure the signal's strong enough to get in there, but make sure if there's a lot of heavy traffic going either way, that we had devices which can handle and pass the traffic. So when something's being received on a Wires X network in a Wires X room, your node is transmitting all the time. So if we had a lot of Wires X traffic, then that could really kind of sort of be a problem on there. But the next stop on there, which was going to be the easiest one, was going to be DMR. And we chose the AMCOM network. And we chose the AMCOM network for, well, two reasons. One, it's not as constrictive as the network I'll bring up in a minute here, but it went along and we had, and this is the telephone number. Look at the telephone number. There's a telephone number for a DMR network. An amateur DMR network has a telephone number for you to call. And to me, that spoke volumes. So I got involved with the AMCOM network, and actually I own and help run one of the servers, the Chicago server. And it was great because it was great to have collaboration on people with AMCOM and a DMR network. And more importantly, the DMR network of AMCOM was actually now able to branch this stuff out there. So what I did is I had a talk group on the Brandmeister network, which was 31551, and the numbering. So people ask where the numbering came from. Well, the Wires X numbering came just luck of the draw, right? That was 21667. Had no choice over there. That's what Yaesu assigns you. But the DMR talk group for DUNoW was 31551. So 3155 is a Wisconsin statewide talk group, and then they added a 1 onto the end there. But now what we did is we put the DMR talk group 31551 on AMCOM, and it was running on AMCOM now. So now I had a DMR network that was running that had the talk group that was more secure in a way, and I'll say it this way, because of the other network that it used to be on, which was Brandmeister. So that's why I chose AMCOM. Brandmeister did not want to really allow networking out, the cross connection, stuff like that. They were very hesitant about it. And I asked numerous times, well, can this be linked out to this? Can this be linked out to this? And I'll be honest with you, the answers that kept coming up over and over and over again was, why? Why do you need that? Why do you need that? If I was able to even get an answer to my question. And I didn't like that. I really didn't, because when you limit the people's connectivity to a network, you're limiting the people to be able to communicate, right? Duh, okay? But more so, the way I said secure in this case was important because people will get shut off on Brandmeister because they feel Brandmeister feels the rules, you violated the rules. So they wanted to put restrictions on certain talk groups. They want to put this kind of thing. I can't have that. What I need is I need a network to be able to go and saying, okay, I'm having digital traffic come in and it's going out to these other networks. And with DMR, everything is on a lot of different networks. So we need to be able to link the two networks together. And that's why AMCOM was used instead of Brandmeister. So now what we did is we, in essence, we IMRS networked the system together. So what we took is we said, okay, instead of the repeaters being, in this case, the Hayward and Baldwin repeater, being linked together only, what we did now is we said, okay, let's add a YCS server into this mix. And now that YCS server would then, hosted on the AMCOM network, would then go ahead and allow you to then communicate in that regards of saying, okay, now IMRS traffic is going to go into the AMCOM network and the AMCOM server, and then we're going to then have the option to cross it over to DMR. So by improving the operation of one network, which was the IMRS usage, we now were able to add an easy crossover from the DMR network over to the YCS network. And now as the network was growing, we had Wires X connected in IMRS repeaters on Fusion, and those repeaters on Fusion were then crossing over to the DMR. So now not only were we leveraging infrastructure and public access points, because WiresX could be used as a public access point, but now what we were doing is now we had started to officially first cross over the different modes, which was now DMR to Fusion. Now, we had to set up some parameters, because what we did is we can't open the floodgates, right? We can't have all the DMR come out one side, because DMR operates different than Fusion. So what we did is we put a DGID on the Fusion side, and that DGID is DGID 55. So when you go into any of the repeaters that were connected on the network, or you come in on WiresX, you are actually going to be feeding in on DGID 55, crossing over then to DMR talk group 31551 on the AMCOM network. So now those two were connected together. As the thing grew and it started to grow, what we wanted to do is we knew that there were people who were not using WiresX as a Fusion connection platform. What I mean by that is they weren't coming in on WiresX always to go out there. Some people wanted to use hotspot devices. Some people wanted to cross-modulate from other digital voice modes, which were not part of the network as of yet. So we created a YSF server, and that YSF server tagged into the YCS server and on the AMCOM DMR network. So now we're not only expanding the cross-modulation, yes, it was only 2 modes at that point, but we were working on that infrastructure, the public access points, and the personal access points. Now we are fulfilling that goal. Now once we had this, that people can come in like on a hotspot, that people can come in on WiresX, that people can come in on, and when we say hotspot, it meant Fusion or DMR, and people can come in on infrastructure, we were really meeting that aspect of that goal. But we now needed to start expanding upon the different digital voice modes. So where we started in 2021 to where we were at in 2023, which, yes, took roughly about 2 years, because there was a lot of testing that we needed done. We had WiresX Room 21667. We had IMRS, now decentralized, but now on YCS Reflector 313 using DGID 55. We had a DMR talk group of 31551 on AMCOM. We had a YSF reflector, and all the connections were linked 24/7. Now, once again, people are like, well, that took a while, 2 years to do that. Don't you think that was kind of slow growth, John? Well, no, it wasn't. Because one of the things you have to do is when you have a giant network like this is you have to watch what we call the ripple effect. What that ripple effect means is that the minute that, and think of like a clear lake, right, or water. If I drop a stone or I drop something in the water, it's going to make a splash, but then it's going to do a ripple, and it's going to ripple out. So if we had issues in connectivity, if we had something bad come in from, let's say, the YSF server, or reflector, I should say, into the network, it was going to go out on the DMR. It was going to go out on IMRS. It was going to go out on WiresX. And we didn't need one bad thing ruining the complete network. So each time we did these connections, each time we did these bridges, it was basically a 30-day burn-in period. And what would happen is we would test it, and literally we would try to break the design, what we were doing during that time. And if in 30 days we couldn't break it, we said, okay, it's working. But if we did do something in that 30 days and it broke it, even if it was on the first day or it was the 29th day, we stopped, we reevaluated, we attempted to fix it, and then we started another 30-day burn-in period. Now, did this delay things? Yes, it did. Were we constantly having issues? No, we weren't. But you take your time in this kind of slow growth. You take it, on there. At a minimum, when we did WiresX to IMRS, that's one 30-day burn-in period. When we brought over the DMR talk group, that was a 30-day burn-in period. When we connected, to the YCS server, that was another 30-day burn-in period. When we connected to a YSF server, that was a minimum of a 30-day burn-in period. When we started to test it all across there, that was another 30-day minimum burn-in period. Now, once again, I'm not saying that this was perfect right off the bat. It's not. And if you think stuff in radio is, you're completely mistaken. But right there alone, that's a minimum of 6 months. So this is 2 years. So we weren't that far off course. Now, once again, this is an amateur network. It's not a business network or something. So guess what it is? It is when I had time or when people had time to work on it. So that delayed it. But now we ask ourselves these questions. We have DMR connected to Fusion, and we have those other aspects and the goals on there. Where do we go next? What mode should we incorporate? So do we do P25? Do we do NextDen? Do we do M17? Or do we do D-Star? And the answer, or the winner, is we did M17 and D-Star. Now, why did we go M17 and D-Star? And why do we do them together? Well, just given the way that these two digital voice modes use it. So D-Star uses GMSK, which is a antiquated digital voice type of modulation on there. Everything else right now is using AMBE plus 2 servers, which, yes, which D-Star does use, but we're using like C4FM, we're using 4FSK, we're using those kind of things on there, which make cross-modulation within the same house a little bit easier. With D-Star using GMSK, we have to have something that goes into it on D-Star, transcodes it, and sends it back out. So not only are we able to just twist the data and send it in and out, but now we had to take the data in, convert it to something that works, and then send it out on the network. So that's why it had some issues. Now, because of the structural and architecture of M17, kind of fell into that same boat. So those both got put up on a XLX reflector, and then we had that transcoding on there. So realistically, that was easy to do. The issues that would come in with these two digital voice modes is the normal stuff that you do, where it's the transcoding of data. Is someone talking too hot? Is someone talking too much? Of, like too much audio, what is going on there? So that was kind of the issue that we started to run into there, and that's why we could knock out two birds with one stone compared to the other ones where it was just one at a time. And we said, okay, let's do that. Now, one of the things that DMR to Fusion actually provided is that if you had a DMR ID, it was associated with your call sign. So when Fusion was passing it from Fusion into DMR, then your DMR ID would show up on the DMR users and vice versa. If it came back up on DMR, it's going to go my 7-digit DMR ID number, then we get transcoded into alphanumerics of my amateur call sign on the other end. So now, as the network grew, we added on this XLX server, which has one spot on it. So XLX servers have like A through Z on there. We had the one little spot on there for D-Star, and we had the one little spot on there for M17, but now we had that cross-modulation taking place. We had a majority of the networks. Now what would happen is that a person come in on Fusion, DMR, D-Star, or M17, and then they would all cross-communicate with one another, and then it depended on how they came into the network. So once again, that final goal in there, infrastructure, public access points, personal access points, were all working together, and they were doing really well. Now, the next, we said, what do we do? Let's add P25. Now, the reason we said, okay, why do we add P25 is because we said, okay, what two modes of the remaining one, P25 and NextDen, are popular in Wisconsin? Okay, not popular in general, because people be like, oh, NextDen's very popular. A lot of people that have NextDen in Florida, they're like, oh, NextDen, da-da-da. Okay, that's Florida. That's great. It's not here. And in addition, you have to take a look at it. It's like, can people access the network when you add the digital voice mode? So, for example, once again, NextDen, a lot of people use NextDen down in Florida. Okay, you're using NextDen in Florida. Great, grand, nifty, neato, wow. But can you access the DUNoW network by what we have as an open connection for NextDen from your network? Right? So it's like no sense in saying, oh, I can talk on a NextDen repeater, but it's not connected to anything. So, that's what you have to think and deal with. So we said, let's do P25, and then P25 went and was the next one on there. So what we did is then we added a P25 server, and we added it into the network. And as we sit here at the beginning of 2025, so March of 2025, this is what the network was up and running. We had overall the digital voice modes. We had Fusion, we had no particular order, Fusion, DMR, P25, M17, and D-Star. And then for the network access types, we had repeaters, we had hotspots, and we had public access points, so like Wires X nodes and all those kind of things on there. So we were growing and we were reaching that aspect of the whole thing. Now, one of the things that I will say in this case is, and we usually get asked about it, is that with this network, John, so you're putting all this up yourself. And the answer is no, we're not putting it up itself. What we're doing is we're giving access to the DUNoW Network. So with the DUNoW Network, we did a kind of a different concept on there. We are not a club. We are not a group. We are not an organization. We are not a 501c3. We are not a chartered member of everything like that on there. We don't hold regular meetings. We don't. What it is this is literally an open network for you as an amateur to connect to it. And you can connect to it via repeaters. You can connect to it via, well, once again, these public access points, which would be like radios that have the mode built in, antennas outside, wires X, those kind of things. And then to have it with personal access points, which are like once again, like hotspots, those kind of devices on there. But, and I can't stress this enough on the network, is you can come in and connect and disconnect from the network when you want to. It's not a need of saying, okay, you're going to have this repeater connected to the network 24/7. All right. Good example is I see this a lot with D-Star. Like D-Star, you have like a bunch of repeaters, like in an area, covering an area, and they're all on the same reflector. It's like you can hit the different repeat. You could hit like 4 or 5 different D-Star repeaters. And I've had people tell me this. It's like I can hit 4 or 5 different D-Star repeaters, and guess what? They're all on the same reflector. And I'm like, well, that's kind of stupid. Isn't that a waste? Right? Because if you have coverage of 2 repeaters in an area, why would you both have them covering the same area? If they equally cover the same area, why wouldn't you split a network? Why don't you have that? So that's why we said with DUNoW, have an ability to access if you want to, connect when you want to, but basically keep your own identity. Keep it as a club. Keep it as a group. So, good example, there's the Chippewa Valley Radio Amateurs Association out of Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. They have a repeater that is tied into the DUNoW network. But here's the great part. They, by simply switching the DGID, can either talk into the DUNoW network, or they can talk on the repeater on a different network or different area. So their repeater is their own. When members or club members or people want to access it, they turn to DGID 55 on the Fusion repeater, key up, and then they're talking into DUNoW. But if they want to go to a different network, they want to go to a different location, they can change their DGID, key up, and then go to a different network or different group of people they want to talk to. That keeps that identity whole. That keeps that identity for usage on there. So if there's a weather event, if there's a local net, if whatever the case may be, there's a bunch of different scenarios that they want to stay independent and they don't want to be connected to the network or have network traffic, they can do that. They can connect and disconnect from there. DMR repeaters in upper left corner. Classic example of that. I key up with the DMR repeater, blah, blah, blah. You know, see what I'm saying? So it needed to be that ebb and tide, that kind of flow, that ebb and flow, as they say, because you want to have individuality. And that's really what digital voice gives you. Digital voice gives you individuality, but also allows for group mentality. And what I mean by that is saying we can all connect together as a group. But overall, with this concept, you could also stay within your realm of the digital voice. So if you have users who are only using Fusion or users that are only using P25 or whatever you want to use, okay, I have the ability to change a channel and talk on my type of digital voice mode, DMR, P25, Fusion, blah, 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 whatever. But I can just change another channel, and now I'm using the mode I want to go out to other modes to talk to other people. So that's kind of why it was important to have this access to DUNoW in this way. So how is DUNoW different? Well, once again, users come and go as they please. They want to change a channel to DUNoW, talk it down in the mode they want on a DUNoW network, they're good to go. Infrastructure, come and go as they please. Once again, we have different people, different clubs that will connect in and out of the DUNoW network through the day. And you don't know. You really don't know that they're connecting in and out, because all you know is you're sitting with your mode connected to the DUNoW network, and then you hear traffic come in on the DUNoW network. But you don't know how they're doing or how they're coming in. But that infrastructure can come and go as it pleases. And then once again, the realm of operation stays in current mode but crosses over easily. Once again, use talk group 3 on AMCOM, or it kind of goes out to other ones too. I think TGIF has it on there too and stuff. But I'm on AMCOM. I'm on DMR 31551. I'm talking to DUNoW Network. Switch over to talk group 3155, Wisconsin statewide. I'm now talking over in DMR only over to the talk group for Wisconsin. That's how easy it is. That was the case on there. So, DUNoW connection details. Now this is I kind of have it like a circle because it all flows, right? Regardless of what box you pick to start on, you're going to eventually go back to that box. So if we start at the top here, we have Wires X Room 21667 digital only. Goes down, and then you can come in on the YCS server 313 using DGID 55. You go in on the YSF reflector, DUNoW YSF 31551. DMR talk group on ANCOM 31551. M17 reflector, M17 XLX reflector 334 using server reflector W. And then D-Star reflector XLX 334 server reflector W. So XLX 334, and I'm sorry, M17 334. Once again, those are servers, reflector W because of the DUNoW network for W for Wisconsin. And then P25 reflector 31551. Once again, wherever you're coming in on this box, it's going to go around to the whole different groups on there. All right. So while obviously you're not able to ask questions on here, if you're listening on the podcast, if you're listening on or watching this actually on the YouTube channel, some of the questions, once again, they had at the presentation, or I was asked later about it outside of the presentation, so how does the network keep funding? How does the network keep growing? And I thought, okay, that's a really good question. Well, the way it keeps growing, the way it keeps funding comes down to you at a local level. So if you have a WiresX node, or you have a P25 node with an MMD VM board, or you have whatever way you can talk into digital voice, that's your expense, that's your design, that's your cross to bear, as I say. And in that case, then you go and select and you put everything you want into here to then connect to the network. So once you've established the infrastructure of your equipment, this personal access point or public access point, okay, or a secret, what we also call an SFS, single frequency site, which is kind of like a public access point. When you have all those together, you're the ones doing that to be able to communicate. All we're doing is we're providing a connection for you to go into your Pi-Star software, to go into your WiresX software, to go on your radio key up. We're providing that gateway to you, and when you do that, now you're just connected in and out of the network. Are there costs to bear for it? Yes, servers cost money, okay? But in the scheme of things, to be able to have a network that's open and people can talk on it when they want to, how they want to whoever they want to, the cost is very minimal for the operational aspect of it. So that was one of the biggest things on there. They said, what are the rules? Like, is this an MCOM network only? Is this what kind of network is it? Well, we kind of sort of said, it was an open network, but we said it could be used for MCOM purposes. But I'm going to take the high road. I'm not going to say some things here, but largely think there's some people that in higher places, Aries races and stuff like that, within local levels and other levels, that really don't like this concept on there. So, okay, fine. If you don't like that concept, you don't want to use it, whatever the case may be, that's fine. It's there to be used. And like I said, we have people that use the network to talk to their friends, like in Indiana. There's people that, once again, snowbirds, Florida, Arizona, they talk back to their friends through the network here. So there's different things that are out there about it. But overall, it is what it is. It's a network to be used. And if you're not using it, then why aren't you using it, right? It's not, you go buy a nice car, why just let it sit in the garage? Use it, take it, do those kind of things. No, we're not restricted to saying, okay, there's this going on, or there's this going on, or there's this going on, or no, you can't use that. No, because that was that Brandmeister mentality, and we got rid of that right away on there. So that's kind of what the network is. It's there to be used. Hop on, talk, throw out your call sign. Now, I know I hear this a lot. I hear people saying, well, I put on my call sign and no one answered. And then I hear people saying, yeah, hey, I was listening the other day and I heard some people call, but there was not much traffic. Well, okay, like if you're sitting there listening to it and you hear someone call, answer them back, right? So that's kind of the aspect there. Now, another thing that some people ask, and they said, John, what have you found to be issues with this? Because there's a lot of moving parts to it. Well, there's two issues I will say that stick out in my mind right away. If you say issues with the network, what do you stick? And what it is first of all, people need to make sure their radios are programmed correctly, and that includes like audio levels and stuff. You want to make sure that the audio level of you going into that digital voice is at a sufficient level. It's not overdriving the level. It's not because once again, bad audio in is going to be bad audio out. Bad signal in, bad signal out. Those things. So that's the first thing that people need to do: set up their radios correctly, make sure their devices are running and operating correctly. And here's the thing: I've told people, if you are connecting to the DUNoW network and you don't know if things are set up correctly, or you want to test or something, by far say, hey, I want to test. Hey, I want to do this, this, and this, and this. And if you don't know, contact us, contact me, go on our Facebook group, DUNoW Network, and put out help on there. There's numerous people out there. I love it so much. One of the questions are you an SME, a subject matter expert in any of the digital voice modes? And of all the people that have joined the group, now, mind you, the Facebook group is small. It's like 300-something people, I think. I'm not even 100% sure on the numbers, but I thought it was 300-something. But all the people on there, a lot of people said no. And there was a few like, oh, I know this. But you'd be surprised at how many people actually do know something about it and are just kind of afraid, kind of held back, like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So don't be afraid to ask for help. That's the biggest thing us as hams we need to get over. Now, that's the first kind of thing. The second thing I would kind of say is we've run into some issues, and I'm going to be very nicely, with a certain set of repeaters and mentality and attitude of some of the people on those repeaters. For an example, there's one digital voice mode that we've had some members that have come in and complained that have said, well, John, I thought your network was open. I thought we can connect into it. I tried connecting to a local repeater. Once again, I'm not going to give the information because I don't want it to be that way, but uses one specific digital voice technology that uses, I will say this, some reflector-based stuff. And they switched the reflector, and they were talking on the DUNoW network. And some people came in and jumped in on there, and they said, no. You can't. This repeater is supposed to be in this, on this mode. It's supposed to be connected to this room, station, group, blah, 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 blah. It is not meant to be going to other ones. So then that creates a hardship. Because, is it because the person who said that is a dick? Because they basically are saying, I only like this mode and do it. Because let's face it, some of us hams, we have that mentality. I put my money into this, so I want it to work right by my rules and no one else's rules. So is it that? We don't know. But the owner of the system has said that this is not the case. Well, owner, sorry, you can't speak for the actions of someone else. You cannot, right? You can't say what their motivation was behind it. The only person who could do that is the person that actually said, no, don't do this. So have we had some issues with people connecting into the repeaters and doing that? Yes, we have. That's kind of what that kind of boils down to, because once again, people in their mind feel repeaters should be used like this and blah, 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 and have all these certain things, and it is what it is, right? Once again, 2 hams, 1 club, 3 hams, 2 clubs. But that is the things that we've seen a lot on there. We've tried to mitigate it, but we've also tried to stay out of it, because we tell the people, okay, go to the repeater owner, ask them about this, and see is it actually the mentality of the repeater owner? Well, if this mentality of the repeater owners, which I said to these people, I said, if it's the mentality of the repeater owner, they own it, they can be done with it. Don't use that repeater. Just keep it out of your mind. But on the flip side of the coin, if the repeater owner is saying, no, it's not, you can use it for whatever you want, then I tell them, place it back on the repeater owner. Tell them the incident that's happening. Tell them date and time and call sign and stuff, because digital voice has call signs in there or IDs, and do it that way and saying, hey, blah, 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 and then kind of call out the issue. Don't be afraid to call out the issue either. That's kind of what I've also told people. And so if you're having an issue with something, no good is going to come if you're just going to sit back and not talk about it. Nothing is going to happen good that way. So talk about it. Don't be afraid to talk about it, and get conversation going, get the communication going on there. One of the other questions I asked is like, where do you see the network going from here going forward? To be honest with you, we're going to look at maybe adding NextDen on there. Some people have said, would you entertain a POC type connection on there. Yeah, I don't know. NextN is kind of a little bit of a tricky bug, but it is possibly doable. Would take some time and effort into there. The POC thing may be a little bit easier to do than NextN, but once again, we don't want non-hams to get into a amateur network. So therefore, we'd have to really kind of design a structure or something on there that's access, and that might require money. And sometimes people don't like to use money, those kind of things. So we don't know about that. If anything, I would say the next current goal that we want to do is we want to be able to increase more activity on it and then increase more access to the network. So in this case, what I mean by activity is that we are looking at doing a net. And that net right now, we put a poll out on the Facebook page. That net right now looks like a lot of people wanted to do Monday night. And so we're looking at starting a Monday night net if possible. We might actually start that probably like in November on there. But we're looking at starting a net on there. And then we're looking to see how we can get more people, repeaters, public access points, those kind of things like that on there. I am personally working with technically 5 different groups right now of people are saying, oh, hey, yeah, John, yeah, by all means, this would be a great network. I'd like to connect into it. And some of the places are even looking at, being the presentation was initially in Minnesota, that they're on the east side of the Twin Cities towards Wisconsin, that they're actually looking at hopping in. There's some people like down in Indiana that are looking to hop in. There's people in Illinois that are looking to hop in. And we don't have any, once again, it's not a Wisconsin-only network. So people said, well, you have an issue with people hopping in? And I was like, no, come in, connect. Once again, the network is designed to be able to cross-connect and cross-communicate with one another. So that's kind of where we see the network growing right now. And once again, I say we, it's not a group or anything, but everybody that has a connection to the network has, in essence, a voice in the network, right? Because you can have your physical digital voice in the network, but you also have it in there. And then that's where we tell people, when we say, this is how you promote growth. This is how you promote education. You guys want to do this? Well, we need to do this and this and this for us. So that's kind of where that network and growth is going on there right now. That's where we kind of see the future of it kind of progressing from that point on there. Well, thank you very much for looking at this presentation. I know it's long. I'm looking at the clock on the podcast here. We're like 53 minutes. I am sorry it took a while, but I feel this was a great presentation on here. I wanted to get it out to people who didn't make it on there, that wanted to know about it. I think it's a really good topic because a lot of things are coming on there. Stay tuned. We have a lot more shows coming up here. Once again, sorry. Once again, you saw what this presentation was. You saw that it was there. It took about 45 minutes for the presentation with, questions and stuff. And that was about what real time was on there. So until then, everybody, I want everybody to stay safe. Enjoy the fall weather if you're into the fall weather kind of thing on there. I know I am with, nighttime and stuff like that, and having maybe a nice cigar and an adult liquid comedy beverage while listening to radios out there. Feel free to, listen to us on a different podcasting streams. Check out our YouTube channel. And if you ever have ideas or anything about, like, hey, this would be a great idea for a show, or can you talk about this, or can you talk about this? Let us know, and we'll be more than happy to bring them up. Got some more shows kind of planned up here. I'm bringing back and some of the co-hosts on there that we've had on there. And it sounds like I might actually be doing some shows or stuff with other people. So really, really kind of fun things to do here that are kind of coming up. So we're looking forward to it all. Once again, I can't thank everybody enough for joining in. I know I'm not looking for subscribers. I'm not looking for numbers. I'm not looking for anything like that. I'm just basically looking for education, passing the word, and kind of getting it out there. So until then, everybody, I want everybody to take care. Like I said, stay safe. And guess what? I'll catch you on the radio sometime.